Adjust your attitude. Everyone's working hard here. My manager Deirdre didn't even look up from her monitor as she dismissed 6 months of my 70-hour work weeks with a flick of her wrist. The half-eaten protein bar on her desk had more of her attention than my quiet plea for help. My vision tunneled as I stood in her office doorway, gripping the stack of reports I'd stayed until 2 a.m. to finish. The spreadsheets held numbers that tracked everyone else's success but somehow never accounted for the cost to me. My voice had trembled when I'd finally worked up the courage to tell her I was drowning. "I'm concerned about burnout. I haven't had a weekend off since February." Her 5-word response hung between us as my hope collapsed. I nodded, my expression carefully neutral, and turned to leave. What Deirdre didn't know was that her casual dismissal had just ignited something in me. Not a breakdown, a breakthrough. By Monday morning, I would hand her a note that would change everything. Before I tell you what was in that note, I want to be clear. This isn't just a story about workplace revenge. It's about reclaiming your worth when others have decided you don't matter. I've noticed many of you messaging about similar experiences, feeling trapped in toxic work environments. If that's you, keep watching until the end, because what I did next might change how you view your own situation. And if you're new here, consider subscribing. I share these raw experiences because none of us should suffer alone in silence. My name is Avery Lockhart. At 28, I was the senior data analyst at a mid-sized tech consulting firm, the kind of person who color-coded her calendar and always arrived 15 minutes early. My colleagues called me the human calculator because I could spot patterns and numbers that others missed. That attention to detail made me valuable to the company, and eventually dangerous to them too. I grew up with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Watching her exhaustion taught me that hard work was supposed to lead somewhere better. She'd always tell me, "Avery, your mind is your ticket out." So I studied relentlessly, earned scholarships, and landed this corporate job that was supposed to be my arrival. The glass office building with its sleek elevators and complimentary coffee bar seemed worlds away from our cramped apartment where I'd done homework by flashlight when the electricity got cut off. When I started at Crestview Consulting, the promise was clear. Work hard for 2 years, prove yourself, and doors would open. The reality looked different by year 3. My salary had increased by just 4% annually, while my responsibilities had tripled. I now managed projects that previously required 3 people. My desk had become an island I rarely left, my lunch breaks sacrificed to urgent client requests. The morning of that fateful Friday, I'd received another email. "Avery, Marcus left for that startup in Seattle. Can you absorb his central bank analytics project? Just temporary. Thanks." That was the 4th temporary project in 3 months. Each previous colleague who left was never replaced. Their work simply became mine. I'd prepared for my conversation with Deirdre carefully. I'd practiced a professional tone, brought documented evidence of my expanded workload, and researched solutions to propose. But none of that mattered when she couldn't even spare 30 seconds to look me in the eye. After her dismissal, I returned to my desk in a daze. My computer screen blurred as tears threatened. A notification popped up, another late-night call scheduled for Sunday. My pulse quickened as anger replaced hurt. I looked around at my remaining teammates. Eliza, dark circles under her eyes, was quietly weeping in the conference room while still on a client call, muted. Oliver, who'd missed his daughter's recital 3 times last month, was washing down anxiety medication with energy drinks. We weren't employees to Deirdre and the leadership team. We were resources to be depleted. I opened a blank document and began to type. If Deirdre only respected data, then data she would get. That weekend, instead of collapsing into recovery, sleep, or frantically prepping for Monday deliverables, I transformed my dining table into an investigation headquarters. I pulled out my laptop and began extracting information from our project management system. The company had recently implemented tracking software that logged everyone's active hours, keystrokes, and outputs. It was meant to monitor productivity, but it had unintentionally created a perfect record of our overwork. I downloaded reports showing how team members worked through lunch breaks and logged back in from home until midnight. Next, I created spreadsheets comparing our team's output before and after the increased workloads. The pattern was clear. Productivity spiked briefly when people took on more projects, then steadily declined as burnout set in. Tasks that once took 4 hours now required 7. Error rates increased by 38% after the 50-hour mark each week. I cross-referenced this with our retention data. In 18 months, we'd lost 11 key team members. The cost of recruiting and training their replacements exceeded $800,000, a figure the finance department had buried across multiple budget lines. The medical leave records told another story. Stress-related absences had increased 215% in our department compared to the company average. 3 employees were on anxiety medication who hadn't been before. But numbers alone wouldn't capture the human toll. I created an anonymous survey using a private account and sent it to current and former teammates. Would you describe yourself as burned out? How has your physical health changed since joining the team? Have you sought medical help for work-related stress? What feedback have you received when raising concerns? The responses poured in faster than I expected. People had been waiting for someone to ask. I developed stress-induced eczema that covered my arms. I missed my grandfather's funeral to finish a presentation that no one ended up reviewing. My marriage is failing because I'm too exhausted to be present when I'm home. My manager told me to toughen up when I asked for help. Their words fueled my determination. This wasn't just about me anymore. By Sunday afternoon, I had compiled a comprehensive 20-page report. I titled it, The Hidden Costs of Burnout, a business case for sustainable workloads. The document detailed how our current working conditions were actually undermining the company's financial performance and strategic goals. I included research from Harvard Business Review and Mayo Clinic about how burnout decreased innovation, the very thing our company claimed to offer clients. I added case studies of companies that had improved their bottom line by addressing employee well-being. The final section presented 3 detailed implementation plans for workload balancing, complete with cost-benefit analyses. Each option would save the company money while improving output quality and retention. As I finished formatting the report at 2 a.m. Sunday night, I felt a strange calm replace my anger. This wasn't a complaint. It was a solution. And it spoke the only language that seemed to matter to leadership: profit. I printed the report on high-quality paper and placed it in a professional binder. Then I wrote a simple note to attach to the front. Deirdre, as requested, I've adjusted my attitude. This is my analysis of our current productivity challenges and proposed solutions. I'm available to discuss implementation at your convenience. Avery. Monday morning arrived. I dressed with particular care in a deep blue dress that always gave me confidence. I arrived 30 minutes early to center myself. When Deirdre walked in at 8:15, I waited until she settled at her desk before approaching her office. Good morning, I said, my voice steady. She looked surprised to see me. Avery, what do you need? I placed the binder on her desk. I wanted to share this with you. It's important. What's this? She glanced at the cover note. It's my adjusted attitude, I replied. I think you'll find it illuminating. Her eyebrows rose slightly at my direct tone, something new from her usually accommodating analyst. I'll take a look when I have time, she said, already dismissing me by turning to her email. Of course, I'll be at my desk. I walked out, my heart pounding but my steps measured. I returned to my work, focusing on the immediate tasks due that morning. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. What did you give her? She's been reading something for 20 minutes and looks like she saw a ghost. I didn't respond. The document would speak for itself. At 10:30, Deirdre emerged from her office and walked directly to our director's suite without acknowledging anyone. By 11:15, the executive assistant was scheduling an urgent leadership meeting for 1 p.m. At 12:03, my desk phone rang. Avery, can you join us in the main conference room? Bring your laptop. Deirdre's voice sounded strained. When would you like me there? I asked calmly. Now, please. The conference room held our entire leadership team. 7 people who normally were too busy to be in the same room together. The chief operating officer, Helena Walsh, sat at the head of the table. I'd only seen her twice in 3 years. Deirdre gestured to an empty seat. Avery, we'd like you to walk us through your report. I opened my laptop, connected it to the projector, and stood. For the next 40 minutes, I presented the data I'd gathered, keeping my tone professional and focused on business impact rather than emotional appeals. When I finished, the room was silent until Helena spoke. "How long did this analysis take you?" "I compiled it over the weekend," I replied. She exchanged glances with the CFO. "You created this entire report in 2 days?" "Yes. I had been tracking much of this data already as part of my regular project analytics." "And these implementation plans, you developed these yourself?" "I did. Option 2 would be my recommendation, based on our current resource constraints." Helena closed her copy of the report. "Deirdre, would you excuse us? I'd like to speak with Avery privately." My manager's face tightened, but she nodded and left the room. The other executives followed, leaving me alone with the COO. "Sit down, Avery," Helena said, her tone softer now. "I want to be very clear about something. This report is exceptional work, but I'm disturbed by what it reveals about our operations." I maintained eye contact. "I understand." "No, I don't think you do." She leaned forward. "I've been COO for 5 years. This is the first time someone has brought this level of analysis about our internal operations to my attention. That's a failure of leadership, mine included." My careful composure nearly cracked at her unexpected accountability. "The question now," she continued, "is what we do about it, both the workload issues and the fact that we needed an overworked analyst to point them out to us." I took a deep breath. "May I speak candidly?" "Please do." "Your management chain has been incentivized to maximize output while minimizing headcount. Quarterly bonuses are tied to these metrics with no counterbalance for sustainability or quality. People are rewarded for burning out their teams, not developing them." Helena didn't interrupt, so I continued. "Meanwhile, your most talented people are leaving. Those who stay are working at diminished capacity due to exhaustion. Client deliverables are increasingly late or flawed. This isn't just a human resources problem. It's undermining your business model." Helena was silent for a long moment. "You've clearly thought about this deeply. What would you do if you were in my position?" The question caught me off guard. I had prepared for resistance, not invitation. I would create a task force with representatives from each level of the organization, not just management. I would conduct a thorough workload audit across all departments. I would temporarily freeze new client acquisitions until staffing aligns with capacity, and I would immediately revisit how performance is measured and rewarded. Helena nodded slowly. "Would you be willing to lead this initiative, working directly with me?" Now I was truly stunned. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A new position, workplace sustainability strategist, reporting to me. Your focus would be implementing the recommendations in this report and developing long-term solutions. It would come with appropriate compensation adjustments, of course." My mind raced. This wasn't at all what I had expected when I walked into Deirdre's office with my report. I had been prepared to be ignored, dismissed again, or even to find myself job hunting. "I would need certain guarantees," I said carefully. "Complete access to company data, authority to interview staff confidentially, a budget for implementation, and no retaliation against those who speak honestly about these issues." Helena actually smiled. "You're negotiating with the COO." "Yes, I am." She extended her hand. "Draft a formal proposal with your requirements by Wednesday. I'll have an offer letter to you by Friday." As we shook hands, I realized something had fundamentally shifted. The document I'd created as my response to being dismissed had opened a door I hadn't even known existed. When I returned to my desk, my teammates looked at me questioningly. News had already spread that I'd been in a closed-door meeting with the leadership team. "What happened?" Eliza whispered. I wasn't yet ready to share the details. "They're reviewing some recommendations I made," I said simply. By Tuesday morning, everything had changed. An all-staff email announced an immediate review of workloads and the temporary redistribution of critical projects. External consultants would be brought in to support ongoing client work. A company-wide meeting was scheduled to address burnout concerns directly. Deirdre avoided eye contact when she passed my desk. At 2 p.m., she finally approached me. "Helena would like you to move your workspace to the executive floor, effective immediately." Her voice was flat, her expression unreadable. "Thank you for letting me know," I replied neutrally. As I packed my belongings, I felt no triumph over Deirdre's obvious discomfort. This had never been about humiliating her. It was about creating change in a system that was hurting people, including her. By Wednesday, I had a new workspace on the executive floor, a glass-walled office that made me feel simultaneously exposed and isolated. My former teammates sent curious messages, wondering what exactly had happened. Most assumed I'd been promoted for conventional reasons, unaware of the report that had catalyzed everything. I spent my first days in the new role meeting individually with department heads. Some were openly hostile, viewing me as a threat to their authority. Others seemed relieved, as if they'd been waiting for someone to acknowledge the unsustainable pace. The most difficult conversation was with Jamal, the finance director who had designed the incentive structure that rewarded managers for understaffing their teams. "This system has delivered 14 consecutive quarters of growth," he argued, leaning back in his chair with practiced confidence. "Now we're supposed to dismantle it because some people can't handle the pressure?" I opened my laptop and pulled up the spreadsheet I'd prepared. These numbers tell a different story. Client retention has dropped 23% in the last 3 quarters. The average project now requires 2 rounds of revisions instead of 1, and recruitment costs have doubled as our reputation spreads. He waved dismissively. "Temporary market conditions, it'll stabilize." Jamal, 15 exit interviews specifically mentioned unsustainable workloads as the primary reason for leaving. That's not the market. That's our internal culture. "So what's your solution? Hire more people and watch our margins disappear?" His tone was challenging, but I detected something underneath. Fear, perhaps. "Actually, no. My proposal maintains our current headcount but redistributes workloads based on complexity rather than volume. It implements cross-training to eliminate single points of failure. And it revises the bonus structure to reward quality and innovation, not just output." He studied me with new interest. "You're not just here to advocate for shorter hours. I'm here to make this company sustainable financially and humanly. Those aren't opposing goals." By Friday afternoon, Helena had approved my formal proposal. I would lead a 6-month initiative with 3 phases: immediate workload, rebalancing, systems redesign, and culture transformation. I'd have a small team reporting directly to me and budget authority for necessary resources. The following Monday, I presented the initiative to the entire company in a town hall meeting. Standing at the podium, looking out at faces that showed equal parts hope and skepticism, I felt the weight of responsibility. For too long, we've operated under the myth that burnout is the price of success, I began. The data tells us the opposite is true. Sustainable workloads produce better results. Respected employees deliver superior value. This initiative isn't about working less, it's about working better. From the back of the room, I spotted Deirdre, arms crossed, expression guarded. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. After the presentation, as people filed out, Eliza approached me. "Is this for real? Or just corporate theater before things go back to normal?" "It's real," I assured her, "but it will take everyone's participation to make it work." She hesitated. "Deirdre's been telling people you exaggerated everything to get promoted." I wasn't surprised. The data speaks for itself. That's why I'm forming an advisory committee with representatives from every level. Would you be interested? Her eyes widened. Absolutely. The next weeks passed in a blur of activity. I conducted department audits, interviewed team members, and mapped workflows. The picture that emerged confirmed my initial findings. Our burnout wasn't just severe, it was systemic. My first official act was implementing Focus Fridays. No meetings, no new assignments, dedicated time for deep work and project completion. It was a simple change that provided immediate relief while we tackled the larger issues. The resistance began subtly, meetings scheduled despite the Friday policy, passive-aggressive emails questioning the initiative's value, whispers that I had manipulated my way into a made-up position. Deirdre became the unofficial leader of this resistance. She continued piling work on her remaining team members, now with the added instruction to document productivity impacts of my initiatives. I had anticipated this and built in accountability mechanisms. Every team member now submitted weekly anonymous feedback through a system only I could access. The data quickly highlighted which managers were undermining the changes. Rather than confronting Deirdre directly, I scheduled a leadership review where each department's metrics were displayed side by side: current productivity, error rates, and employee feedback. Her department's numbers stood out starkly against teams that had embraced the changes. As you can see, I noted neutrally, departments implementing the new workload standards are seeing increased output quality and decreased revision requests. Teams still operating under the previous model continue to show declining performance. Helena zeroed in immediately. Deirdre, what's your timeline for implementing these standards in your group? Cornered by data rather than accusations, Deirdre had no choice. We'll begin next week, she conceded tightly. After the meeting, she cornered me in the hallway. Clever move, but don't think I don't see what you're doing. I kept my voice level. What am I doing, Deirdre? Using these so-called reforms to settle a personal score. There's nothing personal about data. Your team is suffering, your deliverables are declining in quality, and your turnover is the highest in the company. That's not a score, it's a business problem. She stepped closer. You know what your problem is, Avery? You never learned how business really works. Success requires sacrifice. Whose sacrifice, though? Because it hasn't been yours. Her face flushed. I have given everything to this company. Except compassion, I replied quietly. And that's cost us more than you realize. As I walked away, I realized Deirdre wasn't my enemy. She was a product of the same system that had nearly broken me. The difference was that I could see it clearly now, while she was still trapped in its logic. By the third month of the initiative, measurable changes were appearing. Client satisfaction scores increased 18%. Project completion times decreased, despite fewer overtime hours. Sick days dropped by 27%. Most tellingly, people began eating lunch away from their desks. Conversations in the break room lasted longer than 60 seconds. Laughter occasionally echoed down hallways that had previously held only the sound of urgent typing. Not everyone was happy. 2 senior managers resigned rather than adapt to the new performance metrics. Several clients who had grown accustomed to around-the-clock availability threatened to leave until they saw the improved quality of our deliverables. The most difficult phase was tackling the company's underlying cultural issues. Anonymous surveys revealed patterns of subtle intimidation, praise for unhealthy work habits, and widespread fear of appearing uncommitted by maintaining boundaries. To address this, I created small, cross-functional discussion groups where people could share experiences without their direct managers present. The stories that emerged were both heartbreaking and illuminating. My daughter had pneumonia, and I still called into 3 meetings from her hospital room. I was told my performance review would suffer if I didn't respond to emails on vacation. My manager regularly texted at 11 p.m., expecting immediate responses. We documented these patterns and developed new company norms, explicit expectations about response times, clear boundaries for after-hours contact, and revised evaluation criteria that measured outcomes rather than hours visible. 4 months into the initiative, Helena called me into her office. I found her reviewing the quarterly financial reports. Client retention is up 9%, she noted, and we've reduced contractor costs by almost half. The team has done incredible work, I acknowledged. It's more than that. She turned her monitor so I could see the screen. Applications to open positions have tripled. Our reputation in the industry is changing. I felt a rush of validation. That was faster than I projected. There's something else we need to discuss. Helena's expression turned serious. Deirdre has requested a transfer to our West Coast office. This was unexpected. When? Immediately. She feels her leadership style is no longer compatible with our direction. I absorbed this silently. Deirdre's departure wasn't what I had wanted or planned. My goal had been systemic change, not pushing individuals out. Helena seemed to read my thoughts. This is her choice, Avery. Some people can adapt to new realities, and some can't. The question is what happens with her team now. They'll need thoughtful leadership through this transition. Someone who understands both where we've been and where we're going. Helena nodded. My thoughts exactly. I'd like you to consider taking over as Director of Analytics. The offer caught me completely off guard. That would mean stepping back from the sustainability initiative. Not necessarily. You've built the framework. The next phase could involve applying these principles from a leadership position, showing it can be done. I asked for time to consider the offer. That evening, I sat in my apartment weighing the decision. The director role would bring greater influence and compensation. But something felt unfinished about my current work. The next morning, I requested a meeting with Helena. I've thought about your offer, I began. I'm honored, but I'd like to propose an alternative. She gestured for me to continue. The position of Director of Analytics should go to someone who excels at analytics. That's not my primary strength. What I've discovered these past months is that my real skill is in systems design and cultural transformation. Go on. I'd like to formalize my current role permanently, not as a temporary initiative, but as an ongoing function, Chief of Workplace Culture and Sustainability. I would work across departments to maintain what we've built and continue refining our approach. Helena studied me. That position doesn't exist in our organization structure. It didn't, I agreed, but neither did our current performance metrics or workload management systems. We created those because they were necessary. After a moment, she smiled. Draft a position description by next week. We'll need board approval, but you'll have my recommendation. 2 weeks later, the announcement went out company-wide. The sustainability initiative would become a permanent department. I would lead it with an expanded team and broader mandate. For Deirdre's replacement, Helena selected Eliza, a choice that surprised everyone except me. Beneath her quiet exterior, Eliza had demonstrated exceptional analytical skills and genuine care for her colleagues. She would lead differently than either Deirdre or I would have. The day before Deirdre's departure, she appeared at my office door. I invited her in, unsure what to expect. She sat stiffly in the chair across from my desk. I wanted to speak with you before I leave. I appreciate that. She seemed to struggle with her words. I still believe much of what you've implemented is idealistic. The market doesn't reward compassion. The data suggests otherwise, I replied gently. Perhaps. She placed a folder on my desk. These are my notes on the central banking project. There are complexities the team hasn't fully grasped yet. Eliza will need this context. I recognized the gesture for what it was. Not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement. Thank you. I'll make sure she gets this. Deirdre stood to leave, then paused. That report you wrote, the one that started all this, how long had you been collecting that data? Almost a year. Every time someone quit or broke down or made an error from exhaustion, I documented it. She nodded slowly. I never saw it. Any of it. I was too focused on the targets. We all were. That was the system we operated in. And now you've changed the system. It wasn't a question, but there was something like reluctant respect in her voice. We've begun to, I corrected. Change takes time. After she left, I reflected on how differently this had all unfolded from what I'd initially imagined. 6 months ago, standing in Deirdre's doorway as she dismissed my burnout concerns, I'd fantasized about dramatic confrontations and public vindication. The reality had been more complex, more challenging, and ultimately more rewarding. The true victory wasn't in proving Deirdre wrong, it was in creating something better for everyone, including her. By the 1-year mark of the initiative, our company had become a case study in industry publications. Our employee retention had improved by 34%. Client satisfaction reached record highs. And for the first time in 5 years, we'd gone an entire quarter without a single stress-related medical leave. Helena invited me to present our results to the board of directors. Standing before them with my comprehensive data and employee testimonials, I thought about my journey from overlooked analyst to organizational changemaker. The numbers tell a compelling story, I concluded, but perhaps the most significant change isn't captured in our metrics. It's in the subtle shift from a culture of endurance to one of sustainability, from valuing hours to valuing impact. The board chair leaned forward. And the bottom line impact? I clicked to my final slide, a graph showing revenue growth alongside our culture metrics. The lines rose in parallel. As it turns out, the human bottom line and the financial bottom line are inseparable. When we stopped burning out our people, we started innovating again. When we created space for recovery, we enabled excellence. Afterward, as the boardroom emptied, the CEO approached me. Avery, what you've built here has implications beyond our company. Have you considered consulting? I smiled. I'm not interested in consulting. I'm interested in continuing what we've started. There's still work to do here. He nodded thoughtfully. Fair enough, but I think your story deserves a wider audience. That conversation planted a seed. Over the following months, I began speaking at industry conferences, sharing our journey and methodology. Companies facing similar challenges reached out for guidance. A business journal profiled our transformation. Each time I told the story, I made sure to emphasize that it wasn't about one heroic individual, but about changing systems that hurt people and ultimately hurt business. 18 months after that fateful day in Deirdre's office, I received an unexpected email. It came from her company address, now listing her position at the West Coast office. Avery, I've been following the coverage of what you've built at headquarters. I've also been implementing elements of your framework here, though I haven't publicly acknowledged their source. The results have been undeniable. I was wrong in how I treated you and the team. My definition of strength was flawed. It takes more courage to change a broken system than to perpetuate it. Deirdre. I sat with her words for a long time. There was no request for forgiveness, no dramatic apology, just a straightforward acknowledgement. It felt appropriate somehow. I composed a brief reply. Deirdre, thank you for your message. I'm glad to hear the framework is proving valuable in your new role. If you'd like to discuss implementation strategies sometime, I'd be open to that conversation. Avery. Simple, professional, forward-looking. The past couldn't be undone, but the future remained unwritten. That evening, as I packed up to leave at a reasonable hour, something that had once seemed impossible, I paused to look around the office. Teams were wrapping up their day, making plans for dinner, talking about weekend activities. No one was hiding anxiety attacks in bathroom stalls or sleeping under their desks. My revenge against a dismissive manager had transformed into something far more meaningful, a reimagining of what work could be. The note I'd handed Deirdre that Monday morning hadn't just changed my career trajectory, it had changed hundreds of lives, including hers. The greatest victory wasn't in making someone pay for how they'd treated me. It was in ensuring no one else would have to experience what I did. In the end, the most powerful response to adjust your attitude wasn't anger or resignation. It was innovation. If you're watching this and feeling trapped in a toxic workplace, remember, your experience is data. Your struggles are evidence. Your insights have value. Sometimes the most effective way to challenge a broken system is to illuminate it with undeniable truth. Don't just survive your workplace, transform it. And if you've found value in this story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share your own experiences in the comments below. The conversation you start might be the catalyst someone else needs to create change in their environment. Remember, burnout isn't the price of success, it's the obstacle to achieving it. Your well-being matters, not just as a human right, but as the foundation for sustainable excellence.